Hello, I'm Lily, and good lord, this is a quite lengthy video. Don't worry, because this is mostly audio, so you can listen to this as a podcast if you wish. There will be a few visual references once in a while to supplement what we're talking about, but don't panic, this is mostly for your ears. So what you're about to listen to is the full interview I had with Luís Figueiredo. I had the opportunity to talk with him via Skype 2 weeks after Portugal's victory at the Eurovision Song Contest 2017. It took me some time to put this out there, but if you're listening to this, hooray, I did it! Yay! So, Luís Figueiredo, who you may know as the man behind the beautiful arrangements of Amar, pelos, Dois, is a composer, pianist, and music teacher at the University of Aveiro in Portugal. He has worked with many musicians, and he's currently touring alongside with singer Cristina Branco, presenting the album Menina, released last year. You're listening to one of the singles of the album. You should definitely go listen to the whole album. It has this really interesting mix of fado with jazz. It's really good. Luís has also released recently an album called SongBird Volume 2 that you can check out at songbirduo.bandcamp.com, and he'll be releasing his third album in November. You can follow more of his work on his website luisfigueiredo.net and on Facebook at Luís Figueiredo Music. You can see all these links in the description. So without further ado, let's jump to the interview. So first of all, thank you so much for taking your time to do this conversation. And huge congratulations on your win. Have you seen the trophy yet? Have you held it?
No, I haven't seen it yet. I think Luisa and Salvador don't have it either right now because there's some kind of protocol, I think. So I was with Luisa and she said, we don't have it either, so so no one has it.
So they're touring the trophy around on several TV shows, but the winners haven't held it yet. Everybody is holding the trophy except the winners.
Except the winners, that's it.
That's unacceptable. Did you watch the show? What were your thoughts about it overall?
No, actually, I didn't watch it because I was playing that night. I couldn't watch it. I would have watched it, because we were in the final, but I didn't watch it because I was working. Actually, I was playing.
Okay, so I can scrap all my Eurovision questions right away. Let's jump to your song, written and composed by Luís Sobral. Do you remember what were your first thoughts when Luisa first showed you the song in its early stages?
Yeah, she sent me 2 songs actually, and I was inclined towards this one because I thought it was a better song. And when I spoke to her after I received it, she told me she preferred this one as well. So we immediately decided that this was the song we would work on. She had some ideas already about the arrangement, about what kind of sound she wanted. I remember she mentioned strings right away from the start, and that's it. I was really happy that she had invited me to do this. We had worked in the past together.
On the album Le Puis Pas?
Yeah, that one was the most extensive collaboration between the both of us because I produced the album and I did all the arrangements. But otherwise, we've been playing now and then. I've been playing on her concerts sometimes. But anyway, I remember being really happy that she called me again because that meant that whatever we did in the past together was nice and she enjoyed working with me. The main thing that really pleased me was that we weren't getting into it to win. None of us were into it for the win, And when we chose the song, I told her I really like this song better than the other one. But you need to be aware that we're not gonna have one single vote because it's the Eurovision. I mean, no one expects a song like this, so we're not even going to get to the final in Portugal. And she said, no, obviously, I'm perfectly aware of that, but I just want to make a good song and we'll have fun. And so that's what I got into, not a winning project, you know, because I'm not really a fan of competitions and contests, particularly when it concerns art and music. I really don't think it makes sense.
Because it's very subjective, right? We all have very different taste in music. It's hard to find one song that pleases everybody.
Yeah, you never know how it reaches people. You are subjected to a lot of formulae and a lot of processes that you don't control, and it's utterly subjective. So I don't really believe in this kind of stuff. But I wasn't getting into that at all. I was getting into a project about making a good song. That's it. And I think that was the spirit that Salvador was brought into the project as well. So everyone in the project was kind of like, we don't care about the votes, we just care about making a good song, that's it.
Do you think that's what ultimately made the song win? You were more concerned with writing a song than with finding ways to win more votes?
Yeah. Sure, because I think this year the anti-hero won. It's a contest about finding a hero, you know, the guy, the most flamboyant kind of show you can imagine. And then this guy comes along and just sings, you know. So that he became like this anti-hero, I think. And it's definitely why it won. I just didn't expect people to react to it this way. I just thought it would be put aside because they didn't have the right package, you know, the right showmanship.
This song not only won the contest but reached the #1 spot on iTunes in many European countries.
Yeah.
What does that say about the industry and about the public? Do you see a shift starting to happen?
I would like to be, you know, really hopeful and say that it means things are changing for the better, but I don't really believe in it. I think it's a phenomenon like many others, but in this case, it's a good phenomenon because it made people reflect upon what's being done, about what music means, about what it means to go up on a stage, about what it means to be a musician. And so these are things that people are not used to reflect upon anymore and discuss, and they're not on the table anymore. So this was the big win for us, I think. The big win for especially Salvador, obviously, because he's the vehicle for all this. But that's his real win, I think. It's that he went up there and forced everyone to stop and listen for a change, you know. But I don't really think it means that people are changing or that people are going to listen to more jazz music from now on. I don't really think that much is going to change. But if you can make people stop for a bit and reflect more, it's a huge win.
So you don't really believe that this may mean that people are tired of what they're listening on the radio and asking for something different?
The main problem is that people don't know what they want. People listen to what is given to them. That's why you have like these songs that when they come out, you turn on the radio and they go on the radio for like 7 times in an hour. And people end up liking it because they get used to it. After the 5th time, you can hum it and you can sing part of the lyrics and you get used to it. So most people really don't make choices about which kind of music they listen to. They are given certain kinds of things through the radio, through internet, through television or whatever, and they don't make that many choices. In this case, I think people were really curious about this really strange guy who went there and sang all alone with a raggedy suit. Again, it's a phenomenon like many others. Only in this case, it's a healthy phenomenon, I think. It's a phenomenon, at least for good reason, I would say.
One of the most frequent comments I read from the general public is that this song reminds them of Eurovision songs from the 1950s, or it reminds them of Disney musicals from the 1940s. What's exactly in this song that takes people back to this era?
I think everything. The song that Luisa wrote that she sent me already had this kind of retro feel about it, as a lot of her music has. And then the kind of arrangement we did is not at all very characteristic of today's music. You know, it has no electronics, it has no sampled music, it has no drums, it has no bass, it has no guitars, it has no electricity. It's just one guy singing, playing the piano, and a bunch of guys playing strings. And that's a formula that was used in the 40s and 50s with huge popularity, you know. But I think everything from the composition to the arrangement and ultimately to Salvador's interpretation of it, we have to remind ourselves that he comes from learning jazz and emulating Billie Holiday and Chet Baker and singers like that, jazz singers like that.
And Brazilian musicians too.
Yeah.
That's also another common remark that many people do, is that it reminds them of bossa nova. Were there any bossa nova influences?
That one I really don't understand. I think bossa nova it's become like a way for people to listen to some kinds of jazzy sounds because, you know, bossa nova has had this kind of connection with a certain era of jazz in the United States. And so it has its own harmonic vocabulary, melodic vocabulary, rhythmic vocabulary. And some of these things are common to jazz as well. So I don't really think there's any bossa nova in the song at all. In terms of harmony, it's very jazzy, especially the arrangement is you know, kinds of chords are used and which were based obviously on Luis's composition. But other than that, I don't really see it. I mean, you have bossa nova records with strings, but then again, you have all kinds of music with strings. So I don't see the connection really.
Maybe it has to do with Salvador's way of singing, you know, that people connect with bossa nova.
Maybe.
Or is it the fact that general audiences are not too familiar with jazz, so they associate it with bossa nova?
I think it's both, actually. I think it's both. People are not familiar with jazz, so suddenly bossa nova was their gateway to jazz, you know, because they do share some features, you know. But at the same time, it's, you know, it's mellow and it's romantic in the more literal way. So in many ways, that's why people connect it with bossa nova. But I think that's it.
So the lyrics talk about this breakup. It's essentially a sorrowful story, a sad but somewhat hopeful love song. So
yeah,
how did the story of the poem affect the process of composition?
Obviously, she would answer this better than me because she writes a whole lot more songs than I do. But obviously, you try to convey in the music something that the lyrics already are trying to express. But sometimes funny things are possible too. Luisa, precisely, she has this song which is called "As the Night Comes Along," which is a really, really sad poem about her grandpa dying and her grandmother still making breakfast for him and then not letting go and all that. So it's kind of a dramatic, really emotional song. And she wanted the music to appear in contrast to that. I remember playing the concerts when we played this song, and it was the happiest song in the lineup. She took her shoes off and started dancing while saying this really, really sad lyrics, you know. So sometimes you play with these two elements by contrast and not by trying to make them coincide.
She'll make his coffee, talk to him softly, laugh at his hair, but he won't be there. She wakes up.
But most of the times, you know, when you sing about sad things, you try to make the music help to convey that sadness or that happiness or that loneliness or whatever the message is. But that's the part of composing a song, of writing a song.
So Luisa talks a lot about simplicity. How does one convey simplicity in music?
Well, it's difficult because sometimes simplicity is apparent. Sometimes the things you write can be complex underneath, but may sound simple And that is a great combination of something which has lots of layers and it's really well crafted and has interesting resources in it. But to the listener, it doesn't sound complicated at all. It sounds singable and really easy. I think that's what I was trying to do with this arrangement. Make it really colorful and strong harmonically. It shouldn't be really simple in that way, but it should sound simple. It should sound fluid. It should sound like a really simple song that you hum to your child at night, I think there are many ways of making it simple. One of them is just reducing the amount of information you use. That's a possibility. That's an obvious possibility, right? Like reducing the amount of layers you put up against each other, reducing the speed at which things are played, reducing the amount of things that are happening, reducing in terms of variety, not using too many different things. So that's a very literal idea of less is more, But the other way I think is more attractive to a musician, which is you actually have lots of things happening at the same time. You have really spent hours working out the best way to do this and that. And maybe the harmonies are quite complex every now and then. But to the listener, it sounds really, really easy. The best example I can give you is the songs of Chico Buarque, who is an extraordinary singer-songwriter and also novelist from Brazil. And his songs are really, he has a few really simple songs, but most of his songs are kind of complex, It's not things you would call simple or easy. But then when he sings it and when you listen to it, it's so fluid. It's something you can walk down the street and whistle, So I think that's a really attractive way of achieving simplicity for a musician.
Roda peão, o tempo rodou num instante nas voltas do meu coração.
Amar pelos, Dois has a very minimalistic instrumentation, only piano and strings. Does each instrument have a specific task per se? Do they play similar chords or?
Well, the piano is almost always there, except for a small part before the end. The piano was used to give movement to the arrangement. For most of the time, I didn't want the strings to provide movement. I wanted them to provide either background colors or really foreground motifs, So I needed something to provide movement, to let the singer know and the listener know where the time is, where the beat is. So I used the piano to do that. The piano doesn't play always the same chords. It plays always the same rhythm. Chords keep changing as the music progresses, but the rhythm is the same. Dun-kin-cha, dun-kin-cha. It's always the same rhythm, or almost always the same rhythm. This gave me a lot of more freedom to give the orchestra different functions that I wanted to, because the time was being kept alive by the piano, The strings start by playing an introduction without the piano, but that's not really, the song hasn't started yet. It's really an introduction. Which I just found out is the longest introduction in the history of Eurovision. So,
and it's also a pretty big intro for contemporary music. Some songs don't even have intros, but this one lasts 20 seconds, I believe.
Yeah, it's really, I didn't make it that long on purpose. I just thought it made sense to introduce the voice that way. I needed that length to introduce the vocals. They introduce the song, and then the song actually starts when the voice starts. And then the orchestra goes away, and it seems like for a moment we're going to have just the piano and voice and vocals kind of texture. But then they come back, and the fact that I always had the piano on gave me this freedom to every now and then take out the strings, and then they come back again to create a climax, and then they go away. And then there's that one section where there's only strings and vocals. And there, the strings play the same rhythm that the piano was playing. which makes it, continuous. So nothing is lost in terms of beat, in terms of time.
I've noticed some small sections of silence in the song. Do those sections serve any purpose?
Well, in that specific case, in the end of that section where the vocals are left alone with the strings, it ends with something we call a fermata. It's a suspension, Time is suspended. And so you need to breathe, both physically, the singer needs to breathe, and also symbolically, music needs to breathe before it starts a new stage, which is even more important in that case because it's the beginning of an ascending way to the climax of the song. So it really needs that silence, that suspending of time in order to start all over again and then building up to the climax. It's not that different from an oral speech that you can give, if you have this long sentence, really intense final sentence or final paragraph, which is really meaningful and it's really climatic and all that, you'll probably breathe a little bit before you start it, And in music, it's basically the same thing. It's the same principle.
Do you think that today's music is missing some of that, some silence, some space to breathe?
Obviously, that's a big problem. Not even between songs, there's silence. Most of the times when you listen to the radio, a song starts when the previous song hasn't ended yet. Or they take the last part of the song, which is usually called a coda, or the introduction, to present the song or to remind the listeners that they're listening to this station or whatever it is. And by the time they stop talking, another song has started already. So you have zero silence. It's an aesthetic choice that radio has nowadays, no silence ever. Not to mention that you have music everywhere nowadays, in shopping malls or supermarkets or wherever. It's just noise on the background. People don't know what they're listening to. Maybe they're being induced into buying something, this kind of product or that kind of product. I don't know. But it's noise. It's mostly noise. And it's so tiresome, because music is the effect you can create against silence. So if you never get silence, how can you appreciate the effect of the sounds you're creating?
That's very interesting. I've read that modern pop music is more about rhythm and less about melody, is more rhythmic than melodic. Would you agree with that?
Well, first of all, I think we're making huge assumptions here, it seems like we're talking about today's music as if it were a homogeneous set of musical expressions. Not all of today's music is what we're talking about. There are other kinds of music, obviously, and
yeah, I'm turning into a grumpy old man in the park. Oh, kids these days don't know what good music is. Back in my day. But I'm mostly talking about the radio hits. A more accurate term would probably be corporate music.
Yeah. I know what you mean. Yeah.
Songs written by several producers and songwriters in a room that are sung by young singers like Justin Bieber, One Direction, Meghan Trainor, Miley Cyrus, with big, expensive, flashy music videos that are selling this identity and have these carefully thought out marketing strategies behind them and all that.
I obviously understood what you meant by music nowadays, but I think it's important for the listeners to know. I don't agree with that thing about music today being about rhythm and not about other things. I think it lacks everything, even rhythm. I mean, the fact that it has a strong beat doesn't mean it's about rhythm, because there are so many rhythmic possibilities. Many of these songs have the same beat over and over again and over and over again. It's the same formula. It builds up to a climax and then it stops and then restarts and the beat is louder. But it's mostly the same resources over and over again. If you tell me that most of sub-Saharan music in Africa is about rhythm, I would agree, because they value it very much and they have a huge diversity. There's a wide range of resources they use and possibilities that they explore. And all over the world, and music, like Latin American music or African music, is so rich and so diverse. And yet, these contemporary manifestations of it are really reduced to 2 or 3 patterns, you know. But this kind of Western contemporary music isn't rich in anything, I would say. Most people would say that it's about rhythm, but I mean, if it's really about rhythm, it should be more diverse in rhythm. And everyone uses the same kinds of beatboxes or rhythm machines or whatever they are to create the same beats, the same kinds of grooves. So I think that kind of music that is made today is really poor in probably every aspect of music you can think of. In the melody, the harmony, the rhythm. So in every characteristic of music, in every way, I think it's mostly really poor.
But those songs sell, you know, they are big hits. Do we, the public, just prefer this type of music, or are we not aware of the different things that are being made? We just end up listening to the radio because it's on.
Well, it's a circle. There's a general lack of knowledge about music that allows people to make choices about what they like and dislike, regardless of what is pushed. So yeah, cultural level is a huge problem in Portugal, definitely, but in other countries as well. People, I'm not saying that everyone has to be a musician. That would be chaos, but it's really important that people know just enough about art and about music to be able to make choices, and that's not really happening. And there's something else, which is these guys, these boys and girls that sell so many records. They're not selling just the music. They're selling a whole package of way of life and trending and way of dressing and all kinds of associations with your lifestyle. And it's not surprising that the target audiences are teenagers, because teenagers are searching for an identity, are searching for things to relate to. And these people provide not just songs and easy listening songs, but you know, they're guides in style or fashion or behavior. You know, it's not just about the music. It's about the show. It's about who you are in relationship with others. It's a much more complex process than making music and listening to music.
So we are always going to have this market of music aimed at teenagers, regardless of what other genres of music are being made.
Yeah, maybe. The amounts of money that are put into producing these kind of teenage superstars is not comparable to the money that is invested in other kinds of music, classical music, art music, jazz music, or traditional music. So it's huge machines of making money and providing teenagers all over the world with things they don't even really know they need. Most of the times they don't have the critique ability to make a choice, to say, you know, this has been on the radio 5 times for the last hour, and all my friends are listening to it, but I don't really think it's that good, so I'm going to listen to something else. Most of them don't have this kind of possibility to choose because they don't know enough. They weren't exposed to other kinds of music because they don't have musical training, even elementary musical training. So we should all have some kind of musical training, the same way we have physical training and other kinds of training. Not to have 10 million musicians all of a sudden, but to have audience members that can make choices, you know. Also not to be fooled, you know, not to eat up everything that's given to you without questioning it. That's what most of the times happen with kids. I mean, this is kind of the speech coming from someone who for his whole life has been connected to musical domains which don't have any money, which are art music and jazz music. So this is kind of my experiences is completely opposed to stuff like this, to all this dimension, all this kind of money going into producing stuff like this, the kind of musicianship or showmanship that they display. my background is completely the opposite. It's in music that nobody listens to. So maybe that's why I speak like this.
Nobody knew who Salvador was a few months ago, and now he's selling his album. He's making tons of shows, and he has this huge following, and all thanks to this one event that is broadcast worldwide to a huge audience. Do you believe that if unknown artists had just a teeny tiny amount of that exposure, that they would have a lot more public than what they do now? Because there's this belief that other genres don't sell as well as trendy pop music, but if the amount of money put into promoting other genres was similar to the amount of money put into pop music, I think they would sell too.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. Because most of the times people don't come to our concerts because they don't even know we exist. Because people usually don't even know that there are different ways of making music than the ways they listen to in the radios. Also, I was on the supermarket yesterday and the song was on. That goes to show that if you want to, you can have music without drums and beats and electronics and all kinds of stuff. I don't have anything against electronics. I use them. I like them. I'm a huge fan of rock bands. I adore Radiohead, as you can see by my poster right behind me. But it goes to show how it's possible. The thing is, the only reason why it was on the speakers in the supermarket, it was because it was the winning song of the festival. It would never be there otherwise. When people come to Salvador's concerts nowadays, unfortunately, it's not because he's an excellent musician. It's because he won the Eurovision contest, you know? So it's a phenomenon like any other.
You don't sound very optimistic. I'm assuming I'm being way too positive and hopeful.
No, I would like to be really hopeful because it would mean great news for us all. But I think it's really, you know, when you're making music and you're trying to sell your music and you're trying to make a living out of it, you face many difficulties. Very early on, you get to this conclusion that the thing you do, the music you make, the way you make music is not comparable to pop music because it doesn't generate money, because it doesn't draw so much public. Pop music nowadays is not about really juicy content. It's about a lot of other things. So from a certain standpoint, nothing is missing from pop music. It's pop music. It's supposed to be quick. It's supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be repeated. It's supposed to be sung by really attractive girls or guys. So those are the rules of pop music. Thing is, people should be able to choose between listening to pop music or other kinds of music and be aware of other things that are happening out there. So I think that's the main problem, is that people are not choosing. Because if people have a rich education, musical and otherwise, and still choose pop music, that's okay. I mean, they made a choice.
This song seems to have a very different structure from the majority of the songs we listen on the radio. It begins with an intro, then it has a verse, followed by the chorus, and then an instrumental part.
Actually, it has two verses in the beginning. It's like A, and then the B is actually the chorus. Unexpectedly, we come back to an instrumental part, which is very similar to the intro in the beginning, but then moves to a different place. And then the chorus comes back again, and then you have like this bridge, because it's kind of like a verse, but it doesn't develop the same way. And you have no more choruses. So it's kind of an odd structure.
Are there more songs with a structure similar to this one?
You know, there are songs with different kinds of structure, but I don't know, it was kind of a short song when Luisa sent it to me. And so we talked about how we could extend it. And my suggestion was to have an instrumental part, what kind of character it would have, and what function would it serve, because it was actually kind of odd in terms of form, in terms of structure. But many other songs have different forms, you know. Actually, jazz standards usually have the same kinds of structures, and I think most of the songs of the 20th century follow more or less these models, which is, early 20th century popular music, popular songs. And all of a sudden the whole world is writing songs with that kind of form. But this kind of form of two verses and a chorus and another verse and a chorus and a bridge and two choruses and then it's over, it's kind of a pop formula that many people follow. But once again, it's important that people know that it's possible to make music in other ways. It's possible to make music without choruses or without repetitions or with strange forms like this one.
Is it hard to reinvent music? Sometimes it feels like everything has been done, but then we think about something like Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen, which is also a song with a really unique structure, and there's nothing like it, and it's very different from everything.
Yeah, it is. But you have like progressive rock, which was really excellent in that way. You have many different sections. I always loved bands that had different kinds of form. The Beatles had stuff which was really, conventional in many ways, and had other stuff that were completely unconventional in terms of form. And bands like Led Zeppelin or Dire Straits or Talking Heads or Pink Floyd, for example, are bands and musicians who had a really interest in exploring conventional forms and unconventional forms, other possibilities. The 70s and 80s were a really rich period for that kind of exploration because of progressive rock and all that kind of spirit of searching for these possibilities and mixing different kinds of stuff and playing Baroque music in the middle of a rock tune, like many did.
Would you consider your song unconventional?
It's a bit unconventional in some ways, but probably ways that most people don't even notice. Like the structure you're mentioning, maybe people are not listening to that kind of thing so much. What is more impressive at first for people, I think, is the classic mood that it has. I think it's a romantic song. I think it's a classic kind of song, although I don't find it particularly like retro or something like that. It was never meant to be like that, Let's do something like in the 40s or something. That never crossed our minds. It's just that the song had this kind of mood and the arrangement had to follow it. The best way to arrange something is to be fair to the song, to do it justice, right?
People cry a lot when they listen to this song. What do you think that makes people cry? Is it the melody, the use of the strings, Salvador's voice, or is it a combination of all of them?
I think it's the combination of all of them, obviously, but it's something I usually call the Walt Disney effect, which is this kind of arrangement with this kind of harmony reminds people of this kind of sound of those ballads that we heard in those famous films by Walt Disney. Actually, I did another arrangement for strings for this other album I produced for Luisa. And when I sent it to her, the first thing that she said was, "This sounds to me like a Disney movie." And I completely agree. It really sounds like that. It's a kind of sound. It's a specific kind of sound, It's the harmonies. It's the fact that there are strings playing. So I think it reminds people of those sad moments in Disney films,
How many versions did it take till it reached the final version we all know?
Just one. Just the one. We had 5 different endings, but it was just the ending. The rest of the arrangement was always like this. But the ending, Luisa and I disagreed because I thought that the accompaniment, the strings and the piano should end when the voice stops singing. Because it's a festival and no one will hear anything after the voice stops. And Luisa said, no, but there should be something after he stops singing. There should be a small coda. So I would write a small coda, and she would say, no, that's not what I meant. I meant something more like this. And I would write a second version, And then in the end, I wrote 5 versions. So the one you have, the one you all know, is the 5th version of the ending. But that's just that tiny little bit of music that happens when Salvador stops singing in the end, which I am absolutely sure no one listens to. Even today, no one is aware that there's music after he stopped singing because everyone is too busy clapping. You know?
Too busy clapping, yeah. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Obrigado.
So that was the interview, and in retrospect, I think I ended in a very abrupt way. I should learn how to wrap these things better. I want to thank once more to Luís Figueiredo for his time. He was really nice and incredibly patient. Don't forget to check out his work on his website, luisfigueiredo.net. Links in the description. There were several other questions that I wanted to make that I didn't because I'm terrible at this. I think I meandered a bit too much around the pop music discussion. And to be clear, you shouldn't feel ashamed for enjoying pop music. Pop music can be really good. The Beatles are one of the best bands of all time, and they were pop. Jazz was the popular music of its time, and even classical music was pop during the Mozart era. I think there's an interview on the internet with Paul McCartney talking about that. But I agree with Luís when he says that we should educate ourselves and be aware of other stuff that's being made. There's plenty of great music out there that will never reach a big audience because of the way the industry works. So it's up to us to explore and support these artists. You can check out my playlist of contemporary Portuguese music that I'll be constantly updating whenever I find a new interesting artist. And that's enough rambling for today, so I hope you enjoyed it. And if you are one of the 3 people who listened this far, I'm assuming you did. So thank you so much. And see you in the next video, which, judging by how long these things take me, it will come out in 2 years.